In the last video we produced, I lamented our lack of numbers on the Silicon Valley Bank bailout, but finally, here they are. The federal government recently intervened to take over Silicon Valley Bank. Do you approve or disapprove of the federal government's takeover of Silicon Valley Bank? 47% of voters at least somewhat approve, but only 22% approve strongly. 40% of voters disapprove, but 24% strongly disapprove. Before we hit the polling internals, let me take a moment to tell you about all of our great historical polling. Almost 20 years of it. As a result, we know more than your average bear about the topic of bailouts. And believe it or not, these numbers make the Silicon Valley Bank bailout one of the most popular in history. Voters are usually strongly against them. Here are some ancient numbers from almost 15 years ago, October 2008. Now keep in mind, this is barely a few short weeks after Lehman Brothers imploded, casting uncertainty across the entire subprime mortgage-afflicted financial system. Do you favor or oppose the banking rescue plan? Then 30% of voters supported it and 45% opposed it. 25% were not sure, but at the time there was quite a bit of uncertainty about the details of the plan. To understand the difference between now and then, let's look at party numbers. Only 27% of Republicans, 33% of Democrats, and 28% of independents were in favor of the bailout. Why were those numbers so low? At the time, in the same set, 59% of voters agreed that government is the problem, not the solution, and a majority, 63%, said that Wall Street would benefit more. Only 22% said the average taxpayer would benefit more. Now let's look at party numbers for our current set. Whether voters approve or disapprove of the federal government's intervention on Silicon Valley Bank. 35% of Republicans approve, though only 12% strongly approve. 52% disapprove. But look at independents. They're only a few points off from Republicans, 2 points more in favor and 4 points less opposed. If you flash back a few slides to 2008, you'll see directionally that Republicans and independents are about the same. So what's different? Look at Democrats. 67% of them are now in favor of Silicon Valley Bank's bailout, including 38% who approve strongly. Only 23% are opposed. That's over twice as much as the Democrats who supported the bailout in October of 2008. And if you think it's only because Biden's in office now and Obama wasn't yet in 2008, here are some numbers from another bailout set in July of 2009. Though most in favor of government funding to states, only 31% of Democrats supported it. Back to the current set. Biden's strong approvers are wildly in favor of the Silicon Valley Bank bailout, and strong disapprovers most opposed. A much starker signal than party. More evidence that the Trump-Biden contrast is much more telling of the rift between voters than just simple party lines. But here are the income numbers. About 43% of those with incomes under $50,000 a year approve of the bailout, but 78% of those with incomes over $200,000 are in favor. There's often a signal in voter incomes, but in my experience, not like this. High-income voters are almost twice as likely as low-income ones to approve of the bailout. How likely is it that the Silicon Valley Bank takeover will result in taxpayer money being used to bail out wealthy investors? 67% of U.S. likely voters say likely, including 43% who say very likely. Only 23% say not likely. Now, this finding might not be controversial, but keep in mind we started asking these questions March 14th, almost a week ago, when most voters would still have had not much in the way of an idea of the mechanics. My hunch is this is more of a referendum on who voters think the current constituents of D.C. politicians are. Strong majorities of all ages, genders, and races agree, and even the party numbers are roughly equivalent, with 75% of Republicans saying it's likely, as well as 66% of independents, and even 61% of Democrats. But here, again, are Biden approval numbers. Although it's still the strongest signal anywhere in the crosstabs, Biden's strong approvers and strong disapprovers are much closer together on this one. Why? Because the Biden approvers acknowledge, at least 54%, a majority do, that wealthy investors are getting bailed out by taxpayers. How likely is it that political considerations influence the Biden administration's decision-making in regards to Silicon Valley Bank? Just like the last question, about 2/3, 66% of voters say likely. When I looked at this question's demographic data, I saw a very familiar pattern. One I noticed about 2 weeks ago when we asked how likely was it that undercover federal agents provoked the Capitol riot. The party and Biden approval internals are almost identical. Here, 75% of Republicans say that political considerations influenced the Biden administration's bailout decisions, but also 58% of Democrats. Just like the undercover agents, they acknowledge it probably happened. What I don't know here in the numbers is whether they're happy or unhappy about it. But look at Biden approval numbers. 48% of voters who strongly approve of Biden say it's at least somewhat likely that politics influenced the bailout decision. 26% say it's very likely, which is more than even among those who somewhat disapprove of Biden. Post your thoughts on this one in the comments. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free to you, and it helps more people see the truth about American public opinion. Follow us on Twitter, like the video please, and thanks for watching.